Okay, this lesson will be about the politics throughout the 1960s. Beginning with the 1960 presidential election, it was the first time that there was a presidential debate on TV. A lot of people thought that John F. Kennedy was too young, he had grown up rich, and that he just didn't have the experience to become president. However, on TV, next to his opponent, he looked young and just very capable, and he becomes the youngest president to ever have taken office. And he is most known for his quote, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." His domestic policy, his policy here in the United States, was called the New Frontier. He represented the youth of America. He had small children in the White House. He also had a very stylish wife. Him and his wife were both from money. They knew about the finer things and how to dress. He wanted to use the power of the government to solve some of the nation's problems. He supported helping the poor, Medicare, civil rights, education, and the Peace Corps. His foreign policy, how he treated relationships abroad, he also opposed communism, and he promised that he would contain it, just how the presidents before him had. We had what became known the biggest crisis of his presidency, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Cuba is very close to the United States, only 90 miles away, and there was a man there in Cuba, Fidel Castro. He leads a communist uprising, and so now we have this country that's very close to us, that's communist, and obviously that made us very nervous. We still had a fear of communism, and we are still having a Cold War with Russia. So JFK says we're no longer going to have any kind of diplomatic relationship with Cuba. We don't talk to you. We don't trade with you. We have broken relations with you. President Eisenhower had even planned to overthrow Fidel Castro, but that didn't work. And so President Kennedy continues with the plan. His plan is called the Bay of Pigs. Some Cuban exiles, some people that were thrown out of Cuba, were trained to, essentially go over to Cuba from Florida and overthrow the government there. However, the plan was leaked, and when they arrived there at the Bay of Pigs, which was the name of the shore they were landing on, the Cuban military was waiting for them and captured them, and JFK's plan was made public, and he had to go on TV and apologize. The Berlin Wall was constructed during this time. The city of Berlin had been divided after World War II, and Russia had a little piece that they were observing and until we could ensure that Germany was disarmed and wasn't going to be up to any trouble anymore, and then we're going to help them all reunite back. The Russians built the Berlin Wall to try to keep their own people from leaving and going to the free side. The Berlin Wall became known as the Iron Curtain. So the Russians know that we don't like communism and that we have been picking on Cuba, essentially, their communist little brother. And the Soviets took steps to help protect Cuba from another invasion. And they secretly began putting missiles up on Cuba, which were only, 90 miles away from the United States. So they could easily have made their way over here, and we become aware of what they are doing. In response to the Soviets putting the nukes on Cuba, JFK orders a naval blockade around Cuba to stop any more weapons from coming in. So our ships surrounded the island, and he also threatens to invade Cuba if the Soviets did not remove the weapons there. This was called the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it was a very, very scary time for the United States where nuclear war seemed like it was actually going to happen. Khrushchev, the leader of Russia, we are all waiting to see what he's going to do. Khrushchev actually told JFK that he knew that he had some nukes in Turkey that we had aimed at Russia, and JFK was like, yeah, I do have some weapons in Turkey that are aimed at you. So they both decided to take them down. He was like, I'll take mine down if you take yours down. And there was a special hotline that was set up between the White House and the Kremlin to avoid further such confrontation, so they could always get in touch with one another.